All right, we're going to fire this thing up. Just a couple quick reminders for the Zoom procedures. Please do mute your microphones. Just keeps that background noise to a minimum so that we can stay focused on our curriculum for the evening. If you do have questions, please enter them into the chat box. I will also ask that you keep outside chatter to a minimum in that chat box. That makes it easier for us to go through and see what questions need to be dealt with. If you have a question that you'd like to ask privately, please send that to Derek Whitfield, and he'll ask that question on your behalf without giving up your name. And then lastly, for the Zoom procedures, go ahead and set yourself up to view this the presentation tonight in speaker view. So speaker view is going to give you the best viewing experience where you can see the videos that we're playing and whoever's talking at a given time. So speaker view, mute your microphone, and questions in the chat box. And like I mentioned, we are going to be dealing with really all things working area tonight. And before we get started, I want to kind of point out what are going to be the highlights of the evening, because they really are very consistent. And those highlights that are going to be repeated through a lot of these different situations are starting position, proper footwork, taking the correct starting step or development of an angle for a play, and getting your head around early to plays. So we introduced last week the idea that on force plays at first base, when you're the first base umpire in the A position, we really want to get our head around to the play early so that the play doesn't blow up on us with all of the elements arriving at the same time. That, as you might imagine, is the approach we want to take on double plays, the front end of a double play at second base. We don't want our eyes arriving late. Same thing with steal plays and pickoffs. Anytime your eyes follow the ball into a play, you increase the chances of that play blowing up on you because everything's coming together at the same time. So starting position, proper footwork, and getting our head around early are really going to be the themes of the evening. So with that being said, let's start talking about double play footwork. I will suggest that you turn your volume up as high as it can. There's a little bit of wind in this video, so listen carefully.
Double play footwork. Step up, square to the third baseman, goes to the second baseman, make a mechanic with a drop step, see the throw, make the call. Just like that. Square, mechanic and right, yeah, and then cross, just like that. I know, right? You look like a dancer, though.
So one, two, three.
Pretty much. Who's up? I'm drop stepping with my right foot toward second base with my mechanic high, so everyone can see it. And I'm right here, and he still has the ball. When I see him throw the ball, that's when I cross over with my left foot and I get ready for the play. That's the issue that I see a lot happening. These guys are here, and they'll be here, and then they'll turn, and the guy never threw the ball. And then we have no idea if the ball's on the ground, is he safe, is he out, and you need to have all those answers. So that's the big key. The drop step with mechanic, but keeping your eyes on second base, and then once you see the ball, just like a steal, you see the ball, you cross, and you get ready for the play. Right to shortstop. Step up to the right. Ball's hit. Right to short. Too much. Less is more. I know. And this is what guys want to do a lot, right? We don't have to do that. So we're already so close to first base, right? step up. Watch the shortstop field it. Shortstop fields it. Now I'm going to take my right foot and just drop a little bit square. When I see that, now I'm going to drop my right foot, my arm, mechanic right here. Still my attention here. Then I'm going to cross. Yeah, he's on. You don't need to run across. I see that from a lot of guys. Second, right? We're at second right here, right? So then drop your right towards first. Big step. We keep our attention here. And then when we see more, we're here. Just watch the ball. He's out. Boom. Less is more. I'm telling you. When you get a second nature, it'll feel good. It will. Step up your right foot. Right foot. Square the ball. Right foot drops. You square second. Make your mechanic and your call. Drop to your right. Cross. Right there. You just gotta do more reps. Yeah. If you do more reps, I guarantee it's gonna come second nature. I promise. Because it wasn't second nature for me at one point.
All right, Donnie Smith taking us through double play footwork with a runner on first base only. So let's look at some breakdowns of this and get a little bit deeper into it and explore the things that he was talking about as he was dealing with his campers there. So the steps in this process are: we want to turn and face the fielder who is fielding the ball. So we're chest to ball to start this play. When that fielder flips the ball to second base, we are going to be square to second base to see that play. And when that fielder throws to first, we're simply going to drop step and cross over. So we're square to the fielder fielding the ball. Then we're square to second base. And then drop step, crossover, and square to first base. And again, let's remember, we want to get our eyes to second base before the ball arrives, right? So we don't want to track the ball to second. We want to get our eyes to second. Similarly, we want to get our eyes around to first before the ball arrives at first base. While you're working on footwork on these plays, don't let your eyes get slow and allow these plays to blow up on you because you're late turning your head. Let's go through that again. I want to show you. So this really has a chance to sink in, and you can, practice. So we're chest to ball, we're square to second base, and then we drop step and cross over. So let's look at that footwork. With the right foot, we drop step, and with the left foot, we cross over. Now, a phrase that you heard Donnie say a couple times was less is more. So look at where the base umpire starts this play and where he finishes it. And it's essentially the same small circle of space. We're not moving significantly in any direction. All we're doing is turning around and viewing the things that we need to view on these double plays. So less is more is kind of a good thought to keep in mind as we're doing this. Now, one very important piece of this play is keeping your focus on second base until the very last second. And so you can see that Scott here is focused on second base, making sure that there's no interference or nothing illegal, and that the fielder completes this play. And once that fielder is going to throw, it's a rapid head turn to get around to first base. And that's what makes this play difficult, because we are tasked with dealing with two different plays in this one circumstance. So we have the play at second and the play at first. And so you've got to have a very good plan for how to deal with both of those plays to the best of your ability. And that plan should be, we're focused on second, focused on second, focused on second. And now on the throw, we snap our head to first and we get ready for the play at first base. All right. So let's let it roll here, and we'll take a look at some negative examples, some things that we don't want to see from our double play footwork with a runner on first base. So here's something that's pretty popular, which is to kind of close down on this play at second. We are running towards second base, and that takes us away from our play at first. So we don't want to move towards second base. We really want to stay in our B position. This is going to be an example of that umpire that's trying a little too hard on this play at first base. So our initial footwork is good. We're in position for our play at second, and we're just taking a few too many steps towards first base. We don't have time when the double play is turned to take that many steps towards first base. I'm looking at the questions as they're coming in. Force play slide rule is something that we're going to talk about later. That first question, I'm not exactly sure what you're getting at. Now what happens if something happens at second, last minute, runner at first is presumed safe? You're going to have to give me a better question there, because I'm not 100% sure how to answer that one. So try to rephrase that one for me, and then we'll deal with it. Now, we also have ground ball double plays where the ball is hit initially to the second baseman. And here we're going to see just how important our chest to ball mechanics are. Notice the direction that Scott turns as this ball passes him on his left side. He's turning to his left. Now, as the ball is fed to second base, he's square to second, and then simply repeating that same mechanic of drop step, crossover to be ready for our play at first. But what we can't do is lose our chest to ball relationship here. So we're chest to ball, we're square to the base, and then we're turning rapidly towards first base. Henry asks a good question about what we should do if the shortstop decides to throw to first. And yes, you should always have a plan. We'll go back to our shortstop fielding the ball. We should always have a plan for how to deal with this shortstop deciding not to go to second base and instead going to first. And that's where instincts will kind of help you. You should have a sense of the play as it's happening and whether they're going to go initially to second base or if that shortstop is simply going to throw to first. So obviously, if there are two outs, there's a much higher chance that he just decides to throw the ball to first base. So use your instincts, and if you do sense that the shortstop is going to throw the ball to first base, then you want to vacate that throwing lane that he would want to use. It's a good question about the ball being hit at you and throwing off your footwork. You really just want to take as few steps as possible to allow that ball to pass you. So if the ball is hit directly at you, simply step around the ball and let it pass you. When we have good chest to ball mechanics, our footwork can be very simple. All we're doing is giving that ball a small bit of space to pass us. I don't have to let the ball pass me and clear me by 10 feet. If the ball doesn't hit me, mission accomplished. So all I'm doing is letting the ball pass me and then getting into the rest of my play. Again, let's focus on our chest to ball mechanics here and then getting our eyes around early to first base. Chest to ball, square to second, turning early to first. Let's check out some poor mechanics on this ground ball to the second baseman. So here we've turned away from the ball, and at the critical moment where something happens, our umpire has their back to that something. And that happens because we have lost our chest to ball relationship, right? So was there interference? Was there something for us to officiate? We don't know because our back was to that play. So let's make sure that just because we assume the ball is going to be flipped to second, we're not ignoring our chest to ball relationship here. It's very important to stay chest to ball so that you know exactly what's going on, and then we can get into the rest of the play. I see a couple other questions about interference. We are going to talk about interference kind of at the end of this. Yes, Mr. Kane, we are going to deal with double play from the C position. Well-timed question, my friend. So here we are in the C position, which means we have either bases loaded or runners on first and second base. So we've moved over to the C position as our starting position here. And what we are going to do as the base umpire is something called the lateral drift. The lateral drift. And that's what we see Scott executing here. He's drifting across from that C position towards the middle of the diamond. Now, what are we showing here? We're showing how we make a decision about when we should move in that lateral drift direction. And this line that goes directly towards the shortstop with then balls either to the right side of the infield or to the left side of the infield, that's going to determine whether we move immediately or whether we wait to see what the shortstop is doing. So if this ball takes the shortstop slightly up the middle, we can, with a relatively high degree of certainty, predict that the shortstop is going to throw the ball to second or first base. So because the shortstop will be going to second or first, we can start to move over to that side of the diamond. Now, the blue arrow is showing the shortstop going into the hole, and that's when we have to worry about the shortstop throwing the ball to third base initially. And that's going to hold us in our C position before we start moving in that lateral drift. So this ball is just to the middle of the shortstop, which means Scott is going to stay chest to ball, and then drift towards the middle. Notice how he's not waiting for the flip. He's not waiting for the flip. He's drifting right away towards that midpoint and getting set for the play at second base. Okay? Notice how he's not moving through that play. He's set and square to second. And now all we're doing is repeating that mechanic of drop step and crossover for the play at first. Okay, so it's lateral drift. As soon as we know the shortstop isn't going to go to third base with the ball, we start our lateral drift. And then we repeat that same footwork of drop step, crossover, while you're getting your head around early. This is a nice view from that kind of low home area, and we can see exactly that point that Scott's getting to around the midpoint of the diamond with that lateral drift. Drop step, crossover. So again, chest to ball, lateral drift, square to the play at second, drop step, crossover. Those are the steps that we want to see on ground balls to the infield where we know the play isn't going to third base. We'll look at a couple of those plays going to third base towards the end of this. So let's look at some bad examples of this. This is our lateral drift not happening, right? And so since this is a ground ball to the second baseman, we can be quite certain that this is a double play or that the second baseman's going to throw the ball to first base. We're not worried about an initial play at third, which means we want to start our lateral drift as soon as this ball is hit, right? And so this action of staying put and then trying to move towards first base is not what we want. We want to see lateral drift, set for the play, and then drop step crossover. Again, we're going to show another negative example here. And this time we're going to see an umpire who's going to run through this play at second base, trying so hard to get closer to first. But before we get to first, we've got to take care of this play at second. And we want to be stopped and square to that play at second, and then simply drop step and cross over for the play at first. So don't cheat and try to get closer to first base, because when this play at second doesn't cooperate and we get a dropped ball or a pulled foot, it's going to be much harder for us to be on top of that play and sell that we saw it well. So that's an umpire that's trying to move a little too hard towards first. Here we're going to see this ground ball that goes into the hole. And what we can see our umpire do is chest to ball, right? That's step one. And now we're simply letting the actions of the fielder take us to our play. And as they throw to third, we snap our head around and officiate the play at third. And I think that question there that I'm seeing, here we have our ball in the hole again, and we're square to third. And so Mario is asking if they go to third and then across to first. Yes, simply at this point, if they throw the ball to first base, we're going to kind of repeat that drop step crossover and get ourselves square to first base. Obviously, we're going to be a little bit further away than we would like, but we've got to take care of the play at third, and then we can turn into the play at first. So let's watch this same play from our high angle here. And if the shortstop fields this ball and decides to throw it to second, which, you know, if there's a slow batter runner, they may still try to turn this double play. We're going to handle that because we have our chest to ball relationship here. And yes, we won't be as far over towards the first base side of the diamond, but we have to protect all three bases as this base umpire. And we've got to be ready for plays at all of them, which means we're going to be chest to ball. And then if the shortstop throws to second, we're simply going to square ourselves to second base and then square ourselves to first base, making the effort to get our head around early to ensure that we see the critical elements of that play and it doesn't blow up on us. So here we're going to see the negative example of an umpire who's predicting a double play, and now they throw the ball to third, and we get caught drifting in the wrong direction. So instead of waiting for the play to develop, our umpire drifts towards that middle and gets caught a little bit out of position. We're going to show some live examples tonight. This is that play that we just saw. It's the ball that's in the hole to the shortstop. Our umpire does a good job of being chest to ball, gets caught with one little false step there, but still maintains a pretty good position for that play at third base. Pretty good position for that play at third. Let's look at another couple play examples here. Here we have our umpire in the B position with R1 only. It's a good starting position. B position with R1 only. And we see chest to ball, square to second, drop step, crossover, and we're going to get that play correct at first base. Square to the play, drop step, crossover. And Kate, I see your question about snapping your head around. We really want to see the infielder complete this throwing action at the very least here because of the possibility for interference. So you're going to stay on that fielder as they throw the ball. But then as soon as they release it, you're thinking, let me get my head around to first base as quickly as I can. But you don't want to move your head off of the play too soon at second base because now the fielder drops the ball or we have some sort of interfering action. And while our plate umpire can help us in those situations, we do want to try to get that correct if we can as the base umpire. So we're letting them throw and then snapping our head around. Here we have R1, R2. So now our umpire has moved over into the C position. And we're going to start our double play, and we have some lateral drift going on. And then drop step, crossover, maybe one or two extra steps there, but not a bad job by our umpire. All right, we're now going to talk a little bit about force play slide rule. Force play slide rule. Turn it over to Mr. Alex Scandalis.
On a force play, the runner must slide on the ground before the base and in a direct line between the two bases. Okay? The width of the base, his entire body is basically within that width of the base. Obviously, it might go off either side if he's a little bit wider, but in terms of his slide, it's directly into the base. We're not sliding on any kind of angle in here or finishing anywhere to the side. Now, permissible, two things here when he does slide into the base. He can pop.
Let me just take a second here to say that these are college force play slide rules. There are some differences with high school rules and other levels of baseball. So make sure that you're understanding what the rules are for the level that you're working. But we're going to be talking about college level force play slide rules here, which are very similar to what we see at the levels below that.
Slide into the base. He can pop. So he can pop up, and as long as it's a natural popping motion, no kind of arm thrusts or anything like that, that's permissible, okay? The second thing he can do is his momentum can carry him through the base on the ground, okay? So turf field, obviously, you know, if he slides a little bit later, which is still in a legal fashion, he might wind up through the base, which is still legal. Again, the idea being that the area between the bases belongs to the runner, the area on either side of the base belongs to the fielder. So even though he goes through, the runner's protected area to the left or to the right isn't interfered with. In terms of the legality of this slide, if he's legal and there is contact, that is not an infraction. Okay, so if the shortstop or second baseman clears this area late, he slides legally right into the base or happens to go through the base, that's still good, okay? Now, the violations. Actions by a runner are illegal and interference shall be called if the runner slides or runs out of the baseline in the direction of the fielder and alters the play of the fielder. Okay? Sorry, Danny. Very clearly, our fielder's behind, and he has a runner sliding outside of the legal pathway into his way, okay? The runner uses a rolling or cross body slide and either makes contact with or alters the play. Okay, so very simply, he hasn't really chosen to slide head first or feet first here. His body's up, he's on his side, and he's making contact, and usually you're gonna see it like that, a little on the higher side, okay? He's not flush with the ground. Runner's raised legs makes contact higher than the fielder's knee, okay? Okay, so this is making contact higher than the knee. So in some instances, I would say it's a little unlikely, but in some instances, a slider's leg gets a little high. So this is a good slide until he gets too high, okay? There's not necessarily anything malicious here. A leg could get that high. The second piece of this is a slash or a kick, and that doesn't necessarily have to be above the knee. If he decides to make an intentional or overt action to hurt the guy, now you're in the area of a force play slide rule violation as well as a malicious contact type ejection, okay? So the difference being the raised leg getting above the knee incidentally or intentional versus if it's below the knee and he kicks or above the knee and he kicks, we still have interference. This is more of an intentional act. The last one here is one that's kind of come up this year. So in terms of what a runner can legally do, so he can slide away from a play. So if the play is behind and he slides outside over here, that's good, okay? He's made an attempt to get out of the way. Now we get into a little bit more complicated situation when he stands up, okay? Comes behind. Okay, so what do we have here?
Force play slide.
Why?
He impeded the defender's progress or ability to throw the ball.
So the first part of that rule is the runner must slide, or if he stands up, he must veer away. So if he decides to stand up and come right through the base, that's a violation, okay? Now, if he stands up and veers away, that's okay. Now, if he stands up and veers toward, what's that? Violation. Okay, now, the thing that can happen here and the thing that we somehow for some reason started to see happen this year is the guy veers and that's the side that the guy winds up on. So, yeah, so the timing of a guy coming across, this guy reads it differently, okay? And he kind of backs out that way. So it's your judgment. Like that play right there, that is not interference. I mean, he veered completely out of the way. Was he on the same side? Absolutely, but God, he was all the way out there. So just have to keep those things in mind. Then obviously on the standing up piece, there's some intentional things he can do that we're not going to allow. Flailing arms at a guy, you know, making it look like he's lowering his shoulder to truck him over, like anything like that, we're going to call right away. Those are all intentional acts that should be disallowed. What is the penalty for a force play slide rule?
Out, runner's out.
He's out.
Backside runner's out.
Okay.
Automatic double play.
So we have this runner out, we have the backside runner out. Can we have the force play slide rule at third base?
Yeah.
Can we have it at the plate? Okay, when we get into a position here to take a double play, and again, we're talking about a ground ball to the left side to the shortstop. Okay, there was a line of thinking maybe, I don't know how long ago, but that you got as far as you possibly could or as far as the...
All right, so that's a breakdown of the rule and some of the things that we're looking for on the force play slide rule. Molly wanted to say hi to everybody, so here she is. Let's talk about how we're officiating this play. And so like I mentioned, make sure that you're clear on what exactly the rule set that you're working with states. In college baseball, you're allowed to slide through the base and or pop up on it. In high school baseball, I believe both of those things are not allowed. Let's talk about some of the mechanics that we're going to see. And what we really want to emphasize is using our eyes properly. So we want to use our eyes properly as an umpire to make sure that we see all of the elements of this play at second base or third base before we make a decision about the play. So, especially in the 2-umpire system, what we see happen a lot is an umpire is so rushed to get that signal up there and call the play at second because they're worried about first base. And that's understandable. Everything is going to happen fast. That's really why we want to save that mechanic until we're turning towards first base. Okay, so save that mechanic until you're turning towards first base. And what that's going to help you do is wait to make your decision on the play at second. Once you put the out signal up, it's really hard to kind of reprocess something that may happen immediately after you put the out signal up, like a runner violating the forced play slide rule. So try to allow yourself to take in as much of that play as you can. And then as we decide to turn, we're putting the signal up and getting on to the play at first base. And that's a good time to talk about the responsibilities in the 2-umpire system versus the 3 or 4-umpire system. So in the 2-umpire system, and again, check with your levels mechanics, but generally what happens is the base umpire is responsible for any sliding violation that happens prior to the throw. The plate umpire is then responsible for any forced play slide rule violations after the throw and after the base umpire has turned their head. So if you have a throw and then say a kick or a slash of the leg by that fielder after the base umpire has turned, that's where we want our plate umpire to take over and make a ruling on that situation. So that's something to be aware of as your possible responsibility as the plate umpire on forced play slide rule. Now, in the 3-umpire system, our base umpire is solely responsible for second base because we have another umpire at first. That means that all of the decisions on that play are going to fall with that calling base umpire, whether it's the second base umpire or the third base umpire in the 3-umpire system. So that's a breakdown of the forced play slide from a rules and a mechanics standpoint. We are going to talk more about rules next week, but we felt like since we were talking about double play footwork tonight, we would drop in a little bit about the forced play slide rule. R. Hughes, I'm not sure what a standing slide is, where the runner never reaches second base. But if their act of standing up hinders the fielder, then that would be judged to be a violation of the forced play slide rule. So in almost all rule sets, if you go in standing up, you have to be completely clear of any space that the fielder needs. So if you go in standing up, you are possibly guilty of the forced play slide rule. All right, we're going to move on, and we're going to start talking about steal plays and pickoffs. And before we get into watching some of the videos on steal plays and pickoffs, I just want to introduce a couple thoughts, and that is that the quicker the play will develop, the more important our starting position becomes. So think of a play that happens fast, like a pickoff or a back pick from the catcher. You're not going to have the opportunity to take very many steps in order to adjust for that play. So our starting position becomes very important. So we're going to focus on what good and bad starting position is as we look at some of these steal and pickoff plays. And again, we want to reinforce the point. We want our eyes to arrive before the baseball does. Now, we might be presented with a slightly different challenge on a steal play, especially at second base when the ball is being thrown towards us in our position. So what we're going to do is make sure the ball's not going to hit us. And then as soon as we can be certain of that, you do want to snap your head around again before the arrival of that ball. That's a good way to get plays correct, is to have your eyes arrive early. So let's go to the videotape. Here we have R1 only with steal play of second base. And what I want to show first is Scott is already into his footwork before this catcher has released the ball. Okay. We're already into our footwork before this catcher has released the ball, and really before the catcher has almost even come up out of his crouch. So early movement here on these R1 only steal plays is going to be key. And now let's focus on Scott's head. If I can try to line up my circles here. Scott's head right here, already facing second base with the ball in flight somewhere around the pitcher's mound. So at this point in the play, Scott has verified that the ball has not been thrown at him. It's not going to hit him. And he can then turn his head as he continues his footwork to get into second base. So we're starting our footwork early. Drop step. We're going to talk more about that footwork here as we unfold. So footwork happens early, and then head gets around early. Now, what is the goal for our movement as the base umpire for a steal of second base? Well, we've taken a good starting position here. We are going to drop step towards second base and finish in this area on the first base side of the cutout. So we're looking to finish in that area on the first base side of the cutout. We don't want to go too much into the middle of the field because that's where the throw is going to be in flight. We don't want to go too far back towards the baseline. So this area that is just outside the cutout on the first base side gives us a good look into the play at second base. So again, good starting position. We see our drop step and head around early. And you can see that we've moved from that B position into the area on the first base side of the cutout. Drop step. And we're set for our play as it happens in second base. Let's talk about steal plays going into third base. On steal plays going into third base, we're really going to focus again on our starting position and then taking steps on the proper angle to allow us to see into this play. So what we never want to do is be running behind a base runner towards a base. So that's what this angle here is showing us, that we want to run in a direction towards the middle of the baseline for steals of third base. So we're not running directly to the base. We're running towards that area in the middle of the baseline to give us the proper viewing angle for this play. So our line down here is this midpoint of the baseline, and that's the path that Scott's going to take to allow him to see into this play. Here we're going to see an umpire who has taken a starting position that's too deep. We're too far back towards the baseline. And that's going to put us in a position where it's harder for us to get out from behind that runner. And that's going to force Scott to work a little too hard to get into that spot where he can view this play. So the red line is showing us bad starting position. The yellow line is showing us good starting position. We do want to get ourselves forward rather than being back and close to the baseline. Here we're going to see an umpire making a mistake of running towards third base. So our starting position is good, but our pathway is not good. And now we've put ourselves in that place where we're behind the runner as they're sliding into the base. We don't want to be behind the body of the runner as they slide into the base, because their body is going to obstruct us from seeing that tag and whether it makes contact or not. Got some good play examples here. Let's take a look at, here we have R1 only. We're in the B position. And let's watch this play and say, we want to be much closer to that area outside the cutout. So this usually happens because we don't react to the ball or to the steal early enough. So as soon as you know the runner is stealing, you want to start your drop step while keeping your head, of course, on the ball. If the ball is put in play, we no longer have a steal play to worry about. We have whatever else is happening. So while we do want to start our footwork early, we want to keep our head on the ball until we know the ball has been thrown, and then we can snap our head around. But getting closer to this play is going to allow you to see what exactly happens between this fielder and runner. So a little bit more aggressive towards that play rather than hanging back. And what we're going to see from this umpire is that a lot of the movement, we're going to see this from our nice drone view here in a second, a lot of the movement that this umpire is making is after the play has completed. So here we are from our drone view, and let's talk about starting position before we address anything else. Here's our optimum starting position. Draw a line from the plate through the edge of the mound, and the midpoint between the mound and second base. That's where we want to start. So you can see that our umpire is a little too close to the middle of the field. He would want to be 2 steps to his left and probably 1 step forward in order to be in a good starting position here. And then what we're going to see is kind of waiting, and now the play happens, and we're continuing to walk in after the fact. Okay? We don't want to walk in after the fact. We want to be on top of plays, which is what we see from our umpire here. Now, I will commend this umpire for a nice instinctual reaction, right? So our initial footwork is great. We've left early. And what our umpire is really working hard to do here is stay in that window to see this play. You can see the way the fielder is oriented to make a tag on the runner, and this umpire really is trying hard to work himself into that window the whole time. Now, did he take probably 2 or 3 extra steps that he didn't need to? Yes, but I commend the effort to try to stay in that window. And you can see the difference in the approach for this umpire here, getting himself back closer to this cutout prior to the play happening versus this umpire here who's just kind of hanging out back here, walking towards the play. Checking out our starting position again. We have our line from the plate through the mound and through the umpire's feet, and then our midpoint. So our umpire has taken good starting position here. And now what we're going to showcase on this play is with runners on first and second, we can't commit too soon for the runner stealing third base. So as this runner takes off, we're going to see our umpire holding his ground until he's certain that the throw is going to third base. The reason for that is if the defense makes a play on the other runner and we've run ourselves all the way down into this area, it's going to be very hard for us to officiate a play at first or second base. So while we do want to be aggressive when there is only a runner on second base and they steal third, when we add that runner at first, we've got to be a bit more conservative to make sure that we don't run away from a possible play. All right. So that's steal plays. And that brings us to pickoffs. So pickoffs are going to happen even faster than steal plays, which means our starting position becomes very important. Being able to see into this play is really going to be a function of good starting position. So Scott is in a good starting position here, and that means his footwork is very simple. On a higher level game, a pickoff is going to happen quickly. You're not going to have time to take more than one or maybe two steps to get yourself oriented towards this play. So what you can see is Scott is simply taking a turning step with his right foot to put him square to first base. So he's simply turning into this play to be square to first. What we're depicting here is this play, even though we can't use the wedge to be in the perfect spot for it, we want to be aware of where that wedge is happening. We want to see in between the fielder and the runner, which means that if we drift too far towards these red lines with our starting position, it's going to become very difficult to see past that runner's body. So having some awareness of the wedge is going to help you even when you can't be in the perfect spot for tag plays. Again, Scott with some simple footwork here, just turning and getting square to this play, being ready. Now we're going to see good starting position, but poor footwork as this play is happening. Taking too many steps. This is not a play that we're going to have time to take more than one or two steps as it develops. So don't get in the habit of taking too many steps. And what you should realize is if you're taking too many steps, it's probably because your starting position is poor. And we can see this is a great shot of our umpire behind the body of the runner to start this play. And he knows I better get myself forward in order to see in between the fielder and the runner. So this deep starting position is going to set us up in a bad position that we're going to have to try really hard to overcome. And it's probably not going to happen. So again, starting position is very important in these situations. See some pickoff, some live examples at first base. What do we think of our umpire's starting position here? I think that's pretty good. This angle lets us see the distance between the pitching rubber and second base. And I would say that this umpire is about 50-50 between those things. So that's a good starting position, at least as far as his depth. Now, in terms of angle, we can't really tell, but good job getting forward. And what we really would want this umpire to work on is getting that right foot stepping forward as this play happens. Get that right foot stepping forward to get yourself square before we make the call. So the right foot really should step forward to get ourselves square to this play before the ball arrives. Take another look here. So rather than kind of leaving that right foot behind us until the end, we want to step forward with that foot. And this is just one of those don't do this situations, right? This is not presenting a very engaged look as a base umpire. Pickoff footwork is very simple. Not taking one step is really the height of laziness as a base umpire. I think we can all muster up the energy to take one step. So not a bad job in terms of the footwork there with the right foot going forward. We would just want that to be a bit more aggressive and getting ourselves turned ahead of the arrival of the ball, and then eliminating those couple drifting steps that happen after the fact. Okay, let's talk about pickoffs at second base. Pickoffs at second base. So again, our starting position is going to be very important. And our footwork putting us into a good spot to see this play while we get our head around early. So Scott has taken a good starting position forward and away from the baseline. And then we're simply turning. So it's really a drop step and a crossover to see into this play at second base. Drop step, crossover, and we're set for the play. And we can see into it because of good starting position. Here's an umpire that's working a little too hard to get into this play. And you can see that they actually run themselves away from where they want to be to view this play. Those three red lines are showing that right now we have a fielder, a runner, and an umpire all lined up, which is not a good thing on a tag play. So the wedge that we can be in is going to exist somewhere on the third base side of this cutout. And we want to stay in that window to see into this play. Now, there's another negative direction that we can move, and that's too far back towards the baseline. So we just saw Scott moving away from the baseline and taking himself out of this play. Now he's started closer to the baseline, and because he's back so far, the body of that runner is going to be between him and the tag. So again, we've kind of straight lined ourselves because of poor starting position. And here we have our three lines again showing us that our umpire has put himself in a straight line for this play, which is not good for tags. And that yellow window is showing us where the wedge exists, where that window exists for this play. All right, let's look at some live plays. Let's take a look at our starting position once again. And again, we see our umpire too far back too far back. We're getting a little bit too close to the baseline, and we may have to worry about that runner sliding in front of us. And you can see that because of his poor starting position, he has really put himself in that straight line. And when we say every step matters out here, every step matters. Just being a little bit further forward gives us a better angle into this play. We're not far away from a better spot, but 1 or 2 steps makes a big difference. All right, let's talk about backpicks. Backpicks from the catcher going to first base. What I want to introduce or talk about, and maybe an introduction for some of you, is the phrase post-pitch steps. Okay, post-pitch steps. So what are post-pitch steps and when should we employ them? Well, they should be employed when we only have one runner that we are responsible for, and we're certain that runner is not going to attempt to advance to the next base. So in this situation, we have a runner on first base. That's the only runner currently that the base umpire is responsible for. And as this play unfolds, we're certain that that runner is not attempting to go to second base. And so what post-pitch steps look like are, as this ball passes through the hitting zone and is not put into play, our umpire wants to get their momentum going in a direction that will be functional to help us see into this play at first base. So let's look at post-pitch steps without any play happening. You can see that the umpire is just getting their momentum going in a direction that will help them see into this play at first base. And when there's no throw, our umpire simply gets back to the B position. So a couple easy steps and we go back to the B position. And now, because we take these post-pitch steps, when the catcher does throw down, we've gotten ourselves moving out of that starting position, and we can get some good distance to create a better angle for this play at first base. Now, sometimes when we don't employ these post-pitch steps, we get anchored into this spot, this B position. We're just killing grass out there. And when we see a play happen at first, we're not going to be able to make a meaningful adjustment to see that play. So we can see that this umpire is simply standing up and then saying, oh, look, I have a play at first base. And that's because of the lack of post-pitch steps. So here we see a pitch and no post-pitch steps. So post-pitch steps, it's a simple 1 or 2 steps. You don't have to overdo it. You're not running on every play. But when we do employ those post-pitch steps, it gets us going in a very productive direction for our backpick plays. Let's look at it done well again. So here we see post-pitch steps with no play. Go back to work from another angle. Post-pitch steps, no play. We go back to the B position. And now, because of that momentum going in the correct direction, we're going to be able to adjust. And you can see just how far that adjust, or how far we've moved from really this K on the field all the way, 4, 5, or 6 steps into much better position to see into this backpick play. And, if you want to separate yourself as a 2-umpire system umpire, these are the kind of things that you can do to really shine on the field. You've got to take advantage of these opportunities to look like you're engaged and working hard. Here we're going to see some drone view post pitch steps just to see exactly the kind of angle that we're taking on these post pitch steps? So the ball's not put in play. We simply take a couple steps and then we go back to work. All right. Let's move along and talk about using the working area and the next possible play. Using the working area and the next possible play. So here we have a ball put into play, a batted ball, and runners advancing. So what do we want to do as the umpire when we are inside here and we have a batted ball and the runners advancing? Well, we want to use the working area. So let's define the working area again and say that it exists from this B position over to the C position and forward to the back of the mound. So that box is your working area. That's where you want to hang out in the middle of the field to have a plan to then exit that working area when a play develops at a base. Let's talk about some key phrases when it comes to using the working area well. First key phrase, split the difference. Split the difference. So when you have multiple responsibilities, you want to be in a position where you are in between those responsibilities. You don't ever want to be way overcommitted to one responsibility versus the other until a play starts to develop. And that's where we can start to use our instincts for baseball. What's going to help you use those instincts? Well, the fundamental of watch the ball, glance at runners, that's what we're going to be doing with our eyes while we are in this working area. So we're going to move to split the difference between our responsibilities. While we're doing that, we're watching the ball and glancing at the runners so that we understand where our next possible play is likely to develop. That's another key phrase that we want to use when we're talking about the working area, the next possible play. So understanding where that next possible play is going to develop is going to be very helpful. And we can see that because we have runners at all bases, Scott has positioned himself in that working area, ready to take responsibility wherever this play goes. And when the throw goes to second base, he simply takes a couple steps and is in position for whatever play develops there. Now, we do have to be aware of the chance of multiple plays happening when this ball returns to the infield. So while we're moving towards a play, we can't go so far that if a subsequent play happens, we're completely out of position. And so you'll notice that while Scott has moved towards the cutout, he's not all the way on top of this play so that if a play happens behind him at first, he couldn't adjust and get at least a believable look at it. The reality is, when you have multiple plays happening in the two-umpire system, you're doing your best to get a believable look at each of those plays, but there are limitations to the two-umpire system, and this would simply be one of them. Now we're going to see Scott drifting away from that working area and showing just how much harder you have to work to get back into a play because we've taken just a couple steps away from the working area. So you can see he's drifted a couple steps towards third base. And now when the play happens at second, it's going to take that much more work to get back into our play at second base. So what you should find yourself doing a lot of on batted balls as the base umpire is standing still until you know where you need to go. So we're taking stock of the field by watching the ball and glancing the runner. And while we're doing that, we don't want to compromise our position in the working area by drifting out of it until we know we have to go somewhere. Okay, cruising right along. I want to talk about an instinct play. An instinct play. So we have 2 outs and a ground ball to the infield. 2 outs and a ground ball to the infield. Where is the defense going with this ball? Well, they're going to throw the ball to first base. And so what we want to see from umpires is aggressive movement towards first base while also understanding where the throwing lane is going to develop. And I saw it earlier tonight that somebody put in the chat box that working with that throwing lane is a tough thing to do. We're going to talk a little bit about it tonight and some things that might make it easier. So on a ground ball to the shortstop, where the shortstop is going to field that ball essentially stationary, they're not charging it or going up the middle. This blue line represents the throwing lane from the shortstop across to first base. So our umpire wants to stay away from that throwing lane. If we saw our umpire moving straight across the field towards the B position, we would be putting ourselves in the line of that throw, which is not a good place to be. So let's take a look at the route our umpire takes here, away from the throwing lane, right? Not going straight east and west, but kind of a little bit southeast there to be out of that throwing lane. Now, what I would like to see from this umpire is much more aggressive movement over towards first base. Okay, recognizing that this ball is going to first and moving more aggressively towards first base to get really as close over there as we can so that we have the best look possible. The best look possible. What else is happening on this play that we can learn from? What do we see that's happening down here at the plate? Okay, so we have talked about the plate umpire moving up the first base line to help with force plays at first base, but that only happens if there is not a runner in scoring position. So if there's a runner that's in scoring position, where do we think our plate umpire needs to be? At the point of the plate, right? Our plate umpire needs to be behind the plate in order to see this runner either touch or miss home plate. While they're standing there and watching the runner touch or miss home plate, they're also focused on what's going on with this runner and the possible play at first base. So we can help our partner on pulled foot and swipe tag plays from behind home plate here. What we can't do from this position is make a ruling if they appeal that the runner missed home. So just keep that in mind, that we're moving up the first base line only on no runners on plays. Only on no runners on plays are we moving directly up the first base line. Let's look at another one of these ground ball situations. So this is going to end up being just a ground ball to the second baseman, but I just wanted to take the opportunity to talk about kind of reading throwing lanes. So if we have a third baseman who charges the ball and fields the ball in front of third base and then throws to first, This is depicting that action, that movement to field the ball and then throw across to first. Our umpire needs to stay away from that throwing lane. Now, let's watch how that changes if you're going to have a third baseman who's going up the middle to field the ball. And if our umpire takes that same pathway across the infield, he is going to put himself in the pathway of that throw. So not all ground balls to the third baseman are created equal. If they're charging versus moving into the hole, the place they release that throw from is going to be very different. And when umpires struggle with the throwing lane, it's really because they're not predicting where the throw will be released from. And that's what we want to do, is understand where this fielder is going to go to field and then release the ball, and how do we stay out of that throwing lane. And the answer would be, we're going to take this route away from the throwing lane versus this route into the throwing lane. Now, what we're going to see is just a simple ground ball to the second baseman, but it's a second baseman charging, and our umpire is going to keep himself away from any possible interference with that second baseman. What you don't want to do is run behind the fielder and have yourself screened out from that play after they release the ball. So recognizing that if this second baseman charges and throws to first, his momentum is going to carry him further forward. And we can see, because this umpire worked hard to get out of the way of that fielder, he's not obstructed at all. And look at this distance that we've moved over towards first base. That's what we really want to see in our 2-umpire system umpires, is the instincts to say, I know where this play is going. Let me get over there so that I can get the best possible look at this play at first base. Those are good instincts right there. That's what we want to see. Okay, last segment. And it's a good thing that Video Brian is going to take over, because my voice is getting tired. So have at it, Video Brian.
All right, so we're back here behind the plate, and we're going to talk about opening the gate for the catcher on pop-ups, on foul pop-ups that are going to go behind us. We've got to have a plan for how to deal with this player who wants to go get the ball. And the mechanics of this are, whichever way the ball is fouled off, I want to open myself up. So if the ball gets fouled off kind of directly behind me over to the right, and the catcher is going to go get it, I'm simply going to open up and let the catcher go. Okay. What we don't want to get stuck doing is backpedaling away from the catcher in this direction, because that's going to take us away from our possible responsibilities of fair foul. The best place we can be to handle a fair foul decision on a pop-up that's coming down near the plate is near the plate itself. So if we get pushed backwards away from that and then have to go back forwards, it's going to be hard to get that fair foul correct. So we really want to open the gate for this catcher, and instead of tracking the ball with our eyes, we want to see what the catcher is doing. That's the important part of this play. So we open the gate for the catcher, and we're getting our eyes to them, and we're letting them take us to wherever this play is going to go as they approach a boundary. So if the play is going to be made all the way back at the screen, I want to go with them. Okay, and I'm going to keep my distance from the catcher to make sure that if the ball happens to fall back in a direction that he's not ready for towards me, if I'm very close to him, I'm going to get involved in that play, and that's not what we want to do. So I'm going to keep my distance from them and be prepared for these calls that are up against the boundary. If we go back to the plate, and we can demonstrate it in the opposite direction. So if the foul ball is popped up to our left side, and we open the gate this way, I see where they go. And then as they approach the boundary, now I can disengage from the plate area and go back with them. The reason I don't want to lose my position here too soon is if the ball gets popped up in the air and I get pushed backwards away and the catch is going to be made somewhere out in front of the plate, it's going to be very hard for me to see whether it's crossed that foul line. So if our catcher goes out in front and I'm backing away, now when a catch is made up against one of those foul lines, it's going to be hard for me to get a perspective on that. Versus if I can stay closer to the point here, now I can get back onto that line extended with one step. So we're always thinking about trying to maintain this area so that I can make a quick one step in either direction to see the fair foul part of this decision. So be thoughtful about the way we're managing these pop-ups, and we'll have a good plan for how to deal with it.
He only does that when he's got no balls or no strikes.
That's a big league ball right there.
All right, just like we're going to have to manage the catcher when we are the plate umpire coming backwards on a foul pop-up, we might have to do that with the first baseman as the base umpire in the two-umpire system. Now, let's remember that on any ball that is fair or has a chance to become fair, we need to move inside. And the phrase that we used there was pop-up means pivot. So if this is a ball that's going to be in fair territory, I'm moving inside with a plan to take the batter runner to second base if I need to. That gives the fair foul responsibility to my plate umpire. However, if this ball is certainly going to be foul, so it's going to challenge the boundary over to the side, I can stay focused on what's going on with this first baseman and have a plan to take him over to the boundary. Now, how do I do that? Remember, this is the one exception to being chest to ball. If the ball is over here, I don't want to be chest to ball and lose what's going on with this first baseman. I want to stay oriented to them, and that way when they start to track this ball down, I know exactly where they're going to go and how I need to move to stay out of their way and then chase them down as this play develops over towards the boundary. Okay? Sometimes they go underneath me or in front of me. If the ball is a little bit deeper, he might be coming directly towards me. I want to just open the gate and let him pass and then go with him to the boundary. What we don't want to do in these situations is predict where he's going to go and start moving. So we might think he's going to go behind us, and so I start to move this way and I put myself right in his path, and now it's harder for me to avoid. Our first movement here is really just squaring up and seeing which direction they want to go. And really, if they're coming straight at me, this is as easy as one step and letting them pass. So less is more in these situations, but having an awareness of what that first baseman wants to do is going to let us get out of their way and proceed into the rest of the play.
Good one to end on, and remind ourselves that pop-up means pivot. So if it is a fair pop-up in the two-umpire system, the first base umpire needs to be moving inside. Because if this ball drops and the batter runner goes to second base, well, we're not in a very good position as a crew to cover that. So pop-up means pivot. Now, I understand last week that I said I don't like pivots anymore, but everyone loves an alliteration, so we're just going to say pop-up means pivot because it's easy to remember. What you do once you get inside, whether you pivot or don't pivot, that's your business. But get inside and protect second base anytime there is a fair pop-up to the infield, with no runners on. And that would include a ball that you think is foul, but is close to being fair. Don't leave any doubt. Don't leave any doubt. And that's going to be our program for the night. So, as always, I'm really thankful for all of you joining me on a Friday. This is really our last mechanics-based discussion. We've gone through a lot of stuff in 4 weeks, from signals to stances to plate mechanics, understanding the wedge, rotation plays, double play footwork, steel play footwork, using the working area, a lot of stuff. And I'm glad that you've stuck with me through it. I would encourage you to go back and watch some of these videos. And I would also encourage you, especially if you're not part of one of the in-person clinics, to get out and practice this stuff. Watching me talk about it and watching videos on a Friday night is certainly better than not doing that. But you're not going to make this stuff part of your game as an umpire unless you drill it. And a phrase that I always like to think about is, don't practice something until you can get it right. Practice something until you can't get it wrong. So ask yourselves that question. Are you in a stage of your umpiring career where you know enough that you can get it right? Or are you at a stage where you know so much that you will never get it wrong? And I think most of us should answer that there's more work to be done. So let's get out and do it. We'll see you back here next Friday. We're going to talk about mentality, rules, handling situations, crew consultations, all of the things that go towards being a good umpire and have nothing to do with moving around the field. So have a nice evening. We'll see you back here in a week.